We are waiting just a minute or two. May get started late because we need to get to a quorum, which would be 7, and we have 6. So we're hoping we have a commissioner showing up just a little late, so please bear with us. That was all right. Yeah, that's all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for bearing with us. I will call the meeting of the December 13th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission in the city of Brentwood to order. If you'd please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Mr. Moran, if you could please call the roll.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sherry Bilderbeck,
Here.
Mark Lavazza,
Here.
Matt Foreman,
Here.
Jeff Hunt,
Here.
Paul Moran here, Hart Nelson,
Here.
John Ritter, maybe online a little bit, and Lisa Shering. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Next item of business is approval of the agenda, which has been distributed. Any adjustments or changes needed to the agenda? If none, any objection to approving by acclamation? The agenda is approved. Next item of business is the approval of minutes. We have 2 minutes to approve. First is approval of the November 8th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Propose that motion.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Being formal, because I want to thank Mr. Favazza for running that meeting when I was unavailable, so thank you very much. All in favor of approval of minutes?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Next item is approval of the November 29th, 2023 Site Plan Subcommittee meeting minutes. Those minutes have also been distributed. Any adjustments or changes to those minutes? With that, any objection to approval by acclamation? Those minutes stand approved. Thank you. Next item of business is citizen comments. Do any citizens wishing to address the commission on items not on the agenda this evening, please come forward? Remind me, online, if we have anyone online as well. Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. We have a number of items of old business that we will move through fairly quickly, since it looks like we have some withdrawals and postponements. First item, though, is P&Z 2312, which was an amendment to ordinance numbers 4810 and 4602 for the conditional use permit and site development plan for Chick-fil-A restaurant at 8590 Eager Road. There was a request from the applicant to postpone this to the January meeting. Is that correct? All right, do we need a motion for that to recommend postponement? Do I have a motion to postpone until the January 10th, 2024 P&Z Commission meeting?
I propose that, yeah.
Been moved by Mr. Moran. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sharing. All in favor? Actually, I don't think we're going to roll call on that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That will be postponed until the January 10th meeting. And Ms. Kelly, please let the applicant know. Next two items, actually we'll go in order. Next one is P&Z 2314. This is subdivision of lots 2334 and 2342 Park Ridge Avenue to create a new lot between the two subject properties. The applicant has requested to withdraw this. Does this also take a motion? Don't recall. Yeah, notification. Yep. So this application has then been withdrawn. Next item, old business C, is P&Z 2315, comprehensive plan, sign plan for St. Louis Society for the Blind and Visually Impaired building at 8770 Manchester Road, what we had our subcommittee meeting on. That has also been withdrawn. Next item of business is P&Z 2316. This was site plan review for the building addition at the Goodwill store at 9110 Manchester Road. Another request from the applicant to postpone to our January meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Bilderbecks. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Moran. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. And that will be postponed to our January 10th meeting. Ms. Kelly, please inform the applicant. And finally, new business, although this is business that we've seen, I think, before us a bit. This is P&Z 2318. This is site plan review for a conditional use permit and lot consolidation. This is 9445 and 9441 Litzinger Road, large adult daycare facility and group home. Is the applicant here this evening or the representative? If you please step forward and just tell us a little bit about what you're proposing. I know that we have heard at least a little bit about this plan already. And if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Paula Kilcoyne. Do you want the address of the agency of Large?
No, large is fine, yeah.
Okay, 9445 Litzinger Road, Brentwood 63144. Yes, so currently we have the building 9441 is deemed inhabitable, and we propose to build a 5,000 square foot group home that would have 4 main floor, completely wheelchair accessible bedrooms and living space, and then on a second story, bedrooms for live-in staff members. That is on the same model of homes that we have in Maplewood and Webster Groves. We would continue to use the building next door, 9445. We would propose to have our administrative offices there, as well as daytime programming. I think the terminology that's being used is adult daycare. You know, we don't, that's not politically correct, but we don't use that terminology, but we say therapeutic and life skills programming for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who do not live in that building. They would come, between the hours of 10 and 2, 2 to, 4 days a week, depending. It would be kind of a variable schedule. We wouldn't have more than maybe 10 people at most in the lower level of the building that's completely wheelchair accessible, although we do propose to do significant renovations. From the prior use for children, some of the wheelchair ramps and openings are not wide enough for adult wheelchairs or good, programming.
All right. We'll move generally, what we'll do is we'll take that information. We're going to go our staff report, and we'll have some questions from the commissioners and then from the public. So if you could, you can take a seat again while we do staff report. Sorry. Ms. Kelly? That'd be great. Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Actually an architect. My name is Pete Utrecht. I'm with Compass Design Build. I'm a custom home builder. We specialize in universal design and accessible building. Most of what we do is residential. We work for the Gary Sinise Foundation, building all of their homes in St. Louis for severely injured vets. So very in tune with this type of building. The new home is a 2-story building, residential in nature, so that it fits with the surrounding neighborhood. The first floor is approximately 3,000 square feet, and will have 4 bedrooms for 4 residents. The second floor will also have 4 bedrooms, and that is for the 4 potential caregivers. We do not have an elevator in the building. We will have a safe room. There'll be a concrete structure. It's basically a large pantry. We'll have a FEMA-rated door. It'll be very accessible for anyone to get in quickly. Everything will be zero entry, so all of the showers are zero entry. There's no curbs. The garage to house is zero entry. The exterior doors to front porch and side porch, all zero entry. So no steps anywhere.
If I recall, is a 2-car garage on there and the side entry? Is that correct?
2-car side entry garage that is accessed from the parking lot of the main parking at L'Arche.
And in addition to living quarters, are there any communal spaces in the building? What other?
There's communal spaces on both floors, so there's kitchens on both floors as well. So there's a large kitchen and cooking area for the residents on the first floor, as well as a private kitchenette on the second floor for the caregivers. And both floors have fireplaces and large communal gathering spaces.
And just think those communal gathering spaces, those primarily for the residents, or are those for other community members as well? Just trying to get an idea of sizing and some of the conversation we may be having a little later.
Second floor will be for those caregivers only, and the first floor could be for guests of the folks that live on the first floor.
Thank you. All right. We'll go to staff report then. I appreciate the update, and then we'll maybe have some more questions from the commission. Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Actually, that was for the text amendment to allow the use. As part of that text amendment, it did allow the option of being in conjunction with a group home, but you had to have a site to be consistent with the child daycare services. Both properties are listed, are Zone B, single-family residential, and the combined properties would be 0.5 acres. L'Arche is seeking a conditional use permit, as we discussed, and will demolish the existing home at 9441 Road to provide a group home, and then use the 9445 Litzinger Road as the programming and adult daycare facility. Possible infrequent respite care. The homes currently sits at, the site is pre-existing non-conforming, and that the home currently sits at 21.26 near the corner of the setback at McKnight Road as well. the front yard setback along McKnight and Litzinger is 25 feet. The gross square footage of the existing home at 9445 is 9,535 square feet, and the new home represent 30% of the total site. The zoning district limits buildings to 40%, so they are under that. The pre-existing nature of the site, they are over on the site coverage regarding parking. Overall parking for the B single-family district is that it shall not be more than 40% of the yard in which the driveway is located. However, they are pre-existing nonconformity. So the recommendations regarding the traffic impact and some of the site parking removal and landscaping would further the site towards the more residential character. Site consolidation. The removal of combining the lots allows for the home to not have to meet the side yard setback, so they can go right up to that, what was the property line. Instead, now there is no property line. So they no longer have to meet that side yard setback on the west. They are meeting it on the east with a 25-foot in the front and 20-foot in the rear. So I have the proposed elevations here for you. The landscape plan. I will let Lee and Andy discuss the landscape plan, but one of the noted items was the maple tree right here under the power line. Should be a smaller variety. I won't do too much part of the parking and traffic, so Lee's here to provide that. But the recommended parking spaces are 18 to 22 stalls. There's 27 spaces on the site, so he has recommended several stalls to be removed and additional landscaping to be provided. We also noted some property maintenance issues. The existing driveway and parking lot is need repair, but it will further erode due to construction. So we would just have as any occupancy permit after the completion of the building provide curbs as appropriate, as required under the code, and reset some of those wheel stops. So the recommended parking removal. They're adding 2 parking spaces where there are existing landscape area in here. Concrete in this area that they've agreed to take out. I believe the applicant does wish to have one of these parking spaces back. So that is up for your discussion tonight. But overall, they've indicated in general approval of the recommendations. So, and they are using some rope to block off one of the entrances to prevent cut through. So Lee has recommended that those be removed and something more
Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Lee Cannon. I'm a principal with CBB Engineers locally in St. Louis, and I serve as a third-party on-call engineer for the city, so the work that I completed was done for you. We did coordinate with the applicant so we would understand what they were attempting to do so that we could provide you input on the site plan related to traffic and parking issues. First, as an apology, if I used any insensitive language in the letter, hopefully I won't do that tonight here in my presentation. But this type of facility is relatively unique, and we don't deal with these very often. And so we, traffic engineers and cities, so we wanted to make sure that we looked at this on its own merits and understood it to be what it is, as opposed to more of a generic land use, and try to fit it into a use that it is not. So what we did, we looked at the existing conditions. We made a site visit to understand what was going on the site, and that from the from the applicant, they typically have administrative functions with about 8 to 9 workers in the existing brick building on the corner of McKnight and Litzinger. They will have adult patrons that are brought to the facility, dropped off by a person that's taking care of them, or potentially on a shuttle bus, which they use. So they really don't.
I hate to interrupt, but John Ritter is on Zoom.
Thanks for joining us, Rocky.
So also, as stated by the applicant, they will have 4 residents in the proposed home and up to 4 caregivers which may live there. And so the residents will not drive. The live-in caregivers may drive, but still with 4 individuals. These types of facilities generally don't get a lot of visitors. So traffic generation from this facility is going to be very minimal, and the existing traffic to and from the facility is very minimal. They may have some employees that come to this site for their administrative function that are providing services in other communities. They mentioned they have facilities in Maplewood, Webster, and there may be others. But generally speaking, the traffic is low. The parking needs are relatively low as well. They will be adding 2 parking stalls, as they mentioned, in a garage structure, so you really won't see those as part of the proposed home. So we also looked at the code and trying to identify how much parking they might need, and that, again, was relatively difficult to do because of the uniqueness of the land use. So we went with looking at an actual calculation based on users. So we calculated using 1 parking stall per full-time equivalent caregiver plus 1 parking stall per 2 residents for visitors, and that's likely overkill. But that would be 6 total parking stalls necessary for the new home. Looking also at the existing administrative and services building where they may have guests come to receive services. We did 1 parking stall per full-time equivalent office worker plus 1 stall per activity room plus 1 stall per shuttle bus so that they'd have a place to park the bus, and that added up to 12 stalls. So we came up with 18 stalls from an operational calculation, and I'm assuming that that's maybe more than they need. They currently have with the new maximum that we added to the parking code at 120% of the minimum, that'd be 22 parking stalls. So again, so as not to create more parking than we need in a residential zoned area, we're suggesting that they not provide more than 22 stalls, and I don't believe that they need those, and that's to keep the site available for landscaping and other things.
Mr. Cannon, can I ask you, does those 22 number or the 18 number that you quoted include the garage?
They couldn't. I mean, again, what we're looking at with the maximum is just so that we don't have an unused sea of pavement. But for the 18, the minimum, they could use the 2 and have 16 surface. For the 22, they kind of have those out of sight. They could go to 24 within kind of the boundaries of, and if they indicate that they really, really need more stalls for a specific use, we could consider it. They also mentioned when they have special events, very infrequent special events, that they do have a verbal agreement with an adjacent property that they can overflow to a local
There
church.
is no street parking, obviously, on either of those locations, so that's the reason I asked. Okay.
So, and I don't know if you have the last page of the report. Oh, it's right here. All right. So we made some recommendations as we go around the site clockwise over at the driveway on McKnight Road. They showed 2 parking stalls at the west end of the building, existing building. And they indicated they needed those to access the ramp to the basement. We recommended, based on looking at it, that it really needs to be a van accessible space. And so if they do make that improvement, that they would just mark one space with a hashed out area so that they could get in and out of a accessible vehicle. There's the one where the inlet is, if you could highlight that for us, Whitney. There's a large MSD inlet in one of the spaces, which basically makes it unusable and kind of maybe potentially dangerous for a car. Not dangerous. It could damage a car, property damage only type thing. You know, you really probably shouldn't count that, and if they wanted to reclaim that for landscaping, they could. I circled the garage on the plan just to indicate where that was. And then the 2 X's that are side by side on the southeast corner of the building, we recommended not adding those spaces. That area is currently landscaped area. And so, you know, leaving it landscaped area, again, not my bailiwick, but the idea of keeping it more of a residential character because it's in a residential zone and they don't necessarily need additional parking. And then the single X that I have in the driveway, they have 3 parallel spaces there today in that lot. And with the access coming in and out of the driveway, we just like to keep that area right at Litzinger Road clear so that vehicles could come in and out. And then the last item that I have was the idea that there's the site itself has some maintenance issues with the asphalt parking lot and the driveway. And those probably need to be looked at because this is a facility that serves people that have special mobility needs. And they should probably consider having appropriate sidewalk ramped connections that meet the current PROAG standards. That's the standards that basically cover ADA design requirements, both at the Litzinger entrance and the McKnight entrance. And there's basically a low spot in the middle of the McKnight entrance that makes it a mud puddle at this time. Now, that's in the right of way, but it is within the commercial entrance. And then evidently they have some issues with cut through traffic on their site, and they're doing what they can, what they know to do. So they've strung some streamers across the driveways, and we're just suggesting that if they're going to implement traffic control, that they would use traffic control devices to do so. So whether that's cones, barrels, maybe a gate that can be opened and closed, something that meets the standards of what we refer to as the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And that's when a gate's closed, there's a sign on it that is retroreflective and people know not to run through the gate, and that the neighbors have something that's more aesthetically appropriate for a residential site. So I can see that they probably do have some cut-through issues from time to time. So fixing that or addressing that in an appropriate manner would be a good deal. And I will be here if you have any questions that you would like for me to address from the report that I provided to Whitney. But I generally don't have any impact concerns. It's more of right-sizing the lot and bringing those entrances and sidewalks up to current PROAG standards.
Recognizing in the interest of not having to have people bounce up and down, perhaps we can adjust for our normal. And if there are any questions for Mr. Cannon on traffic at this point, staff. So I think we may be getting landscape report. Any questions? I did have, actually, just Mr. Cannon, one or a couple questions here. I know you said that you were trying to model, it's difficult to model. What were the hours of operation you were assuming for the adult programming? So basically the more daycare side, but the adult programming. What were the hours of operation we're looking at there? And also, I heard from Ms. Cocoyne that there were going to be perhaps 10 people, but was there a licensing cap on that, or what was the number that you were using for that?
Yes, so operating hours, because low traffic volumes, not really
matter.
relevant to what I did. And then cap, we took our, kind of direction from the data that they provided, so. Generally speaking, when you go out there, there might be 7 to 10 cars parked. I've seen one vehicle pull in and out of there from all the time I've ever driven by the site, in various times of the day. So.
Thank you. Frankie.
I'm up. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. My name's Andrew Frankie. I'm a landscape architect with a firm here in St. Louis called Planning Design Studio. We are the city's on-call landscape architect, and Whitney asked us to take a look at the site. We met on site with Lee and Whitney, so we were kind of all working together when we prepared our review. And we submitted a memo. I imagine you guys have seen that. I'll run through it really quickly. As we usually do, we don't just limit our review to plants. We kind of look at the entire site as part of this. And we've categorized our comments in various categories under general site plan items. And a lot of this is repeat from what Lee said. The two site or parking spaces on the west side of the property one needs to be removed because it actually blocks the ramp as well. So that's pretty similar to what Lee said. One of the other items that we looked at was converting an area that was kind of in a corner of the building to an area there's air conditioners around it right now to kind of convert that area into a storage area for trash cans and lawnmowers. When we were out on site, we noticed that there were lawnmowers and trash cans kind of scattered about. We understand that there'll be a garage with 2 parking spaces, but we were just trying to maybe save some garage space and have an area where that would be screened and you could store things. We also made a note that the petitioner might want to consider resetting the parking stops along the north edge of the property. They were a little bit, I think they've been moved around by traffic and snow plows. I don't know that we'll have snow plows this year. It seems pretty warm. One of the final comments that we made was extending the lawn that's proposed behind the garage, kind of, I'll say, to the west, because there's some extra pavement there that really can't be used. If you pull out of the garage, you can't make an immediate, well, my mother can because she knocks the mirrors off her cars, but you can't make an immediate left, and I guess I shouldn't speak badly about my mother, but you can't immediately turn left out of the garage, so it'd probably be better to put that in lawn, and it might prevent this occurrence, and I think that Lee talked about it, of people during the holiday festival in the park from trying to park wherever they can, and I think if it's lawn, they'd be less likely to do that. Whitney talked about our landscape plan comments. We talked about that Japanese maple that was underneath the overhead electric line. Most people think Japanese maples are pretty small. I've got one in my house that's over almost 25 feet tall. We just want to make sure we get a smaller one so it doesn't get into the wires. There's also an existing stump on the north edge of the property that's a killer. It's just literally grown out of the asphalt. It should just be removed and some of the asphalt restored around there to make it look more level. A lot of these are just kind of property maintenance issues more than anything. We did note that for a facility like this, there's just no ADA parking spaces. So it'd be nice to consider putting 1 or 2 in there so that if people are dropping other people off, they might have a mobility issue, and it'd be nice to have a parking spot or 2 that would work for them. And I think Lee is similar, made a comment of trying to leave as much landscape as we could. He talked about, it's not on there now, the 2 parking spots where one of them is for the bus. It'd be nice to leave one of those spaces with landscaping so it'd screen the bus. And additionally, there's an overhead electric pole where their service comes in. which makes that parking spot too small really for most vehicles unless they would keep hitting the pole. So that's really the extent of our review. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Frank, just one question. I've driven by and taken a look here on Street View. Is the screening to the east, so that basically, because we're now going from a one-story to a two-story building, just thinking of the porch of the neighbor next door, it looks like that screening is on the neighbor's property, not on this property. Is that correct? You know? Okay.
So appreciate the fact you actually sorry, too far from the mic. So the finished floor of the new building is 4.24 feet lower than the existing home was
Because it's on a hill.
because it was on a hill. So they've cut, which is helping your accessibility and drives and all that other stuff. However, there's a retaining wall going in. So the retaining wall and the fence is absolutely, we need to understand where that height is happening in relationship to the neighbors. And then looking at Google Earth, there's a lot of plantings over there. Are those on applicant's side of the property line, or are those on the residential side?
I could show you a picture, Mr. Frankie, if you want.
When we cut 4.25 feet out, if those are on the residential side, we're gonna get into the root canopy,
That's,
drip lines.
On those trees. So those are kind of off property per se. That's a good point that you bring up. They do have planting proposed along that edge, but it's not, it's nothing that's going to really screen that building. So that definitely is a concern. I think that's always a difficult concern because obviously the trees are probably growing over there. How much of that will impact? I think the bigger issue is that actually trying to build that retaining wall, as long as he really needs to stay on the property line so that he minimizes his impact on the root zone. So that's a good point.
just a note for, I'm not sure the best introduction to your new neighbors, of course, is killing the trees that's screening the two properties. So that was something to comment on.
Even though we're 4.25 feet less when we add a second story, at the very least, those trees would have to be trimmed if they aren't already coming out when we cut. Because you're gonna have to over-excavate to put the wall in. Off of that 1.5, so that over excavation for your form work is gonna
I guess, from my, just a raise of thinking of what could be done from the applicant, this is for you, to make sure that you're not eliminating the screening that the neighbor currently has, recognizing that you're building very close to that property line there, is just thinking of what could be done, since it looks like this is not going to be sustainable, maintainable.
I'll sit down and let him talk about a solution.
Yep, there we go. Even better, which is good. Sorry, any other questions for Mr. Frankie, though? Well, I was there, so we don't have to have people bouncing up and down. All right. Please, Mr. Utrick.
The retaining wall is about 2.5 feet tall, but regardless, what we could do is we could design the foundation wall on that east side of the home as a retaining wall. So it becomes a taller foundation wall, a little bit thicker, more steel, that kind of thing, but that allows us to bring that grade up on the east side of the home and not affect and eliminate some or probably all of that retaining wall between the house and the 5-foot property line.
that seems like the easy answer. because otherwise you're gonna have that awkward 3-foot space that's gonna fill up with dead leaves and all that other stuff anyway.
It's tight. The
and-
neighbor has a fence right on the property line, so we
Yes,
have
we-
5 feet to work with, yeah.
Ms. Bilderbeck?
Same subject, Mr. Chairman. I really like that solution. And having had experience even just recently, ironically, my neighbor had to put in a new retaining wall for their yard. It looks fantastic. Yet the tree that was there, they had to dig into it to put the retaining wall there, and it has caused death of part of the tree. I mean, the tree's still alive, but so that absolutely can happen. I love this, and the same thing that you said, I think Mr. Foreman or Mr. Chairman or both of you, but yeah, like it'll be easier for maintenance for the property owner too. And just not having a retaining wall just makes everything so much easier and cleaner and looks good, I think. So that's great. Thank
We
you.
love it when solutions are presented. Other questions from the commission for the applicant?
Done with landscape, are we switching to applicant?
I think we are done with landscape, but we have the applicant who can answer all. Mr. Foreman, sounds like you have a question.
I do. So as we've noted, we're in a residential area. The existing building is 2-story, but it's a mansard with a flat roof over the main building. I'll let our chairman look.
No, that's fine. Keep rolling.
So the existing home to the east, about 4 feet out of grade, slight slope up. However, because we are going in at 2 stories, I have no intention of changing your plan or program, but this is one of the typical things we ask for on my other hat, the Architectural Review Board. Second floor plan, and I would anticipate you're not doing much in the attic because there's no windows up there. One of the strategies we typically ask for to help keep the mass of residential homes lower without impacting the use on the second floor is to change the roof slope from 10 and 12 to 6, 8, somewhere in there, just to bring that peak down, because your highest peak is almost 11 feet above your top plate. So in essence, in the middle, it's almost a 3-story building next to a single story on the east. So if we could tweak the roof slope to get a few feet out of that, play in the perspective, I think we could have a little more harmonious fit with the next door neighbors.
That's something that would be part of a future design for ARB, not for planning and zoning? Or you could make it a condition.
I think our preference likely is not to refer to ARB, and we'll move forward because this is in many ways commercial use, and so that would be the preference. But again, I want to make sure that we have some
comments in the other meeting.
suggestions, so yes. Anything else, Mr. Foreman? You reserve the right, but
Well, we're essentially just talking about what are you going to do on your trusses? 8 and 12?
For a slope, for a pitch? Yes.
I'm going to do some quick math and see how much that shortens it up. I might be back.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sherry had, Ms. Bilderbeck had something.
I know she did. All right, I'm going to look. Anything else, gentlemen? Bilderbeck.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I've had the privilege to be on the Planning Commission for quite a while. So I have actually dealt with this property before on the Planning Commission, way, way, way back in the day when it was a children's home. I first want to say something overall that between this and given some of my experience in the past dealing with the housing industry for 18 years, and then also my work in the social service sector as well. This is a type of development that is incredibly needed. It is something that we are lacking generally as a society. It's great to be able to have these group homes just from a philosophical standpoint here to serve the community and to blend into the community and to you know, going from the way with, there's been several references to language that we use, but the language that we've used over the years has shifted, and so too has our treatment of those who may have some physical challenges or some mental impairments that may need additional assistance to live within the community. The idea that this has respite care, I think, is fantastic because that's something that so many people struggle with, trying to find respite care for loved ones, and especially from something like this that requires really specific needs depending on the individuals. So I just really felt strongly about this that I wanted to share from a philosophical standpoint. And having had this property being used for, you know, it's a different end of the spectrum as far as adults versus children, but the same types of care and the same types of programs and the same types of needs, just serving a different aspect on the continuum of our ages. You know, just as we've looked for having housing for 55 plus in some of the new areas that we've talked about in Brentwood, this is something that that we definitely need. So I want to start by saying that I love the parking and the traffic assessment. I think the recommendations are really straight on with that, the landscaping, all of that, and of course the property maintenance issues are incredibly important. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of conditions that are in here that kind of reflect all of this from the perspective of the design. And this is something, you know, that as a commission we've done a lot, particularly related to commercial development over all these decades, as Brentwood has kind of developed and grown. My first impression when I saw this was that it looked fantastic. I'm very familiar with that area. I have walked that area a lot through the entire time I've lived in Brentwood since 1992. I drive by there all of the time. I think this is going to be an excellent fit. I think the suggestions regarding the roof pitch are just fine, like that Mr. Foreman talked about. I think that this is going to blend in really, really well. So I know I probably have a few other things to say, but I just wanted to put that out there right now, and I'll let you have other commissioners.
We'll go with that. And again, just as a reminder, so we're looking at, you know, two things of business tonight. Obviously, the conditional use permit. The group home is a permitted use, so that's not what we're, you know, really looking at other than the lot consolidation. So, but I do appreciate the willingness to consider being good neighbors when we're talking about the other items that we looked at before. I was remiss to ask, I know I talked to Ms. Kelly about it. There were a number of things, suggestions made by staff and in the staff report, and one of the things we always do want to understand is where the applicant is basically in those. And I believe the ones that we have there now are to eliminate concrete and parking along Litzinger Road, narrow the width of the ingress from 12 to 18 feet was one, maintain the existing landscape at the southeastern corner, and eliminating one of the parallel parking spots at the Litzinger entrance. So you've reviewed this. But actually, rather than listing them all, perhaps it would be, you've reviewed them. Are there any other than, I believe, one parking spot that you wish to keep that you wouldn't
We're in
consider?
agreement with all suggestions, so great.
Made it
report.
easier.
Thank you.
Thanks for
There was
shortcutting
just
it.
one parking request, and it was, I don't know if you have that.
Yep. And that's the keep, is that the green one?
We wanted to remove one of the additional parallel spots against the home to be built, because that is traffic flow.
Right.
Off of Litzinger, and then add that.
And then that would eliminate the landscaping there, though, is that
Well, there'd still be landscaping at
front?
front red.
Okay, would not.
So that pole, there's actually two poles.
Oh, yep. Okay. And just, yeah, please, I know it's hard trying to show too, but we do have folks online and we record this, so the microphone is helpful, so I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, other questions from commissioners?
Chairman,
Mr. Moran, please.
there's been a few comments made about the parking lot and its current condition. Is upgrading the parking lot going to be in the project plan?
It is.
You did mention that the idea is to kind of blend this house in, make it look incongruous with the rest of Brentwood. 5,000 square feet. I don't know if you know Brentwood very well, but there's not a whole lot of 5,000 square foot homes. And each of the homes that you're adjacent to are probably more like 2,000 square foot, single story. Is there any way to kind of downsize this a little bit and make it less congruous? I mean, by the way, it's an eyesore now. The design is beautiful, not questioning that, but it is way, way larger, twice as large as anything else remotely close, including on the other side of the road in Rock Hill.
Can I ask, is the square footage of the administration building next door, do you know what that square footage is?
9,000?
All right, so we're going from, though, on that corner, 9,000 to 4,000. So I'm
5,000.
seeing a shift, 5,000. Seeing a
Okay.
little bit of a smooth, but I take your point, Mr. Moran.
Chairman.
Paul, anything else?
Oh, yeah. Aren't there some generators on the site? Do you have generators on the site?
There's currently a generator on the site that is being removed with the demolition of that house.
Okay.
So we are setting this home up so that it could have a portable generator to plug in, but not a built-in whole house generator that stays in place.
Okay, I won't miss those because every time I get a power cut, I hear those generators come on and I get a little bit jealous. So
They come on once
if you're
a
taking
week.
them away, yeah, well, yeah, there's the testing as well, and they are quite noisy, so I'm not going to miss them. That's good. And sorry, can I ask Whitney a question? Of course. Whitney, thanks very much, by the way. I'll probably stay there because I reckon Matt wants to talk to you. In kind of waiving some of the setback rules, because we're combining the lot, if Losh wants to move out to another facility someplace, where does that leave the current structures? Leaves them non-compliant, and can that even?
Because the CUP is in conjunction with the group home, the CUP covers the entire site, and the site plan approval covers the entire site. If La Arch were to leave, then either any new tenant would have to use the site as permitted through the CUP and as a group home, or they would have to come back to the board for approval of a different use, or to convert it back to residential, they would just go back to ARB, I believe. Is that?
Conforming use.
Yeah, and to a conforming use, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
For Mr. Moran, doing a little quick math, although the building is large, the narrow side of the building is what faces the street. So when you're driving down the street, facing it in context with the neighbor to the east, it's 47 feet wide.
So it's not quite as incongruous.
So the 78-foot dimension goes deep on the lot, so you're going to see a more residential scale from the south looking at the front.
It's only incongruous if you're looking from a drone view of the property.
Or standing next to the existing bigger building looking that way.
Right, okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Any other questions?
Site maintenance, is the city responsible for the sidewalk at the corner of Litzinger and McKnight?
The one north you're talking about, what is a low
Southeast-
spot?
Southwest corner of the
South,
site,
yeah, the low spot.
where you're crossing for the park.
I do not know the answer to that. Mr. Cannon might know the answer to that.
Clarify, where exactly are you speaking of?
So if you're walking westbound on Litzinger and you want to cross to the park, stop and hit the button, that piece of sidewalk on the corner with the ADA cut, et cetera, is that city responsibility, or is that?
That's a question that would need to be investigated, because McKnight to the north of the intersection with Litzinger, the east half of the road is the city of Brentwood.
And west
The
is
west
Ladue.
half of the road is the city of Ladue. The
So it's on the-
county operates the traffic signal at Litzinger and McKnight, and they maintain McKnight south of Litzinger. So that would be a question where it might be a bit up in the air and we would need to go investigate right there at the corner. The county does the signal, but is there sidewalk and ramp? Who does that?
Are you talking about accessibility, Mr. Foreman? Is that where?
No.
Okay, all right.
Because the accessible curb cut is at the corner. It's probably not current code compliant because it's at the 45, not the 90s going each direction. But there's a significant trip hazard with the manhole cover and the surround on it. The sidewalks have settled and it's 2.5, 3 inches. So
I
it's
think
a
that's probably
significant-
far enough. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's probably far enough east of the intersection that it is on the Litzinger city-maintained right-of-way. And Mr. Gummershire was made aware of that on our field visit, and he mentioned that as a maintenance issue.
Okay.
I do want to make sure we stick to the business at hand, though.
Well, that
So I
was-
think that might be off a little
Well,
out of range.
The question was, is it the owner's
Owner's
responsibility
responsibility.
or the city's
Understand.
responsibility?
Understand.
City probably has a policy about maintenance of sidewalks adjacent to homes as to who's responsible, and I couldn't quote that. In my report, I was discussing the sidewalks where they cross the two driveways and the fact that because it is the type of facility it is, it would be appropriate to have current standards met for accessible crossings at those driveways.
Thank you, Mr. Can.
Some very quick math as a follow-up. If we do drop to an 8 and 12 pitch, starting at the first floor plate, so the first floor eave line, because you've got the gables on the first floor, it's actually going to take about 4 feet out of the height, which is a good,
Really?
but
I
no, we'll
believe
figure it
you.
out. If we start at the second floor plate, it comes down 2 feet, but then you end up with a break in the roof line for the gable on the first floor, on the bedroom that's on the south side.
Starting at the first floor plate might create some slope ceilings in that second floor finish base, but
You
I'd have
might
to look at it on the
have
plan, yeah.
Like a 1-foot section only in that main section of the second floor. Essentially a tray, but,
Reasonable.
so 6 and 10 would be too much to ask for. 8 and 10 would be a lovely compromise.
8 and 10 is very doable.
I'm
and
sorry, 8 and 12, not
8 and 12,
10 and 12 right now.
yeah, you mean 8 and 10 is reasonable.
I did the math on 8 and 12. I'd have to double check the other one, but I think we could refine that as the submittal goes forward. The intent is not to impact your usable space on the second floor. The only impact is to drop the roof lines.
So we would need to include that as a condition if you would like to consider that as part of the CUP, yeah.
We do a modified roof pitch to be determined.
All right. Any other questions from commissioners? I do want to take, if we have any members of the public that want to have questions about the application. Anyone online? Mr. Ritter, if you're still with us, if you have any questions, speak up. All right, with that, we've heard of, and again, I appreciate the applicant, all the discussion we've had, and hearing from our consultants as well as staff. And obviously, hopefully, it was a useful discussion for the commission as well. But at this point, I would entertain a motion. We do have a number of staff recommendations as well, which I believe are covered in the staff report. But Ms. Bilderbeck, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move to recommend approval of this application to the Board of Aldermen with the following conditions. And if the gentleman would come closer to the mic, I'm going to clarify one point in just a moment. First of all, that it would include all of the staff recommendations or the recommendations that were listed by staff on our behalf on the December 13th staff report. As part of that, consideration would be given to the height of the home in relation to the neighboring properties, with perhaps some consideration to roof pitch as the solution for that. The foundation, the retaining wall would be minimized or partially removed, depending on engineering requirements, with the foundation of the home on the east side being fortified in such a way to act as a retaining wall to minimize disturbance to the neighboring properties. The property maintenance is recommended as one of the conditions in the staff's recommendations, and that would be a part of it, that all these would be brought up to compliance. And this includes the recommendations of the traffic engineer that are dated from CBB December 8th of this year, and then also Planning Design Studio, the landscape architects, in the memo dated December 5th. In addition to that, I want to ask a question to clarify, to add one more potential condition, which is, would you please explain again the parallel, because this is not written in any of these documents, the parallel parking spot, how you were talking about changing it in the drive line, and what your proposal was relative to that one piece of landscaping?
So currently, there are 3 parallel parking spaces on the, on the west side of the existing building. The intention is to delete the first one that has the red X, the one that's closest to Litzinger Road. We would like to delete the next one that's just to the north of that, but then replace it with a new space where it says add in the blue line, and it's the space next to the current, where they currently park the bus, the shuttle bus.
Okay, great, thank you. And citing that this is currently an exhibit that's on our recorded meeting, that these changes also be approved as part of this recommendation for the site plan.
A heck of a motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sharing. Jessica, did we get that? Hopefully. Captured all that. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? And I think, if I'm understanding correctly, we are making a motion with all of staff recommendations, with this change from staff recommendations, with the consideration for roof height and the consideration for retaining wall, if I captured that,
Retaining wall / foundation.
/foundation, which the solution presented tonight of making the foundation serve as a retaining wall seemed a positive thing. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Sherry Bilderbeck,
Yes.
Mark Favazza,
Yes.
Matt Foreman,
Yes.
Jeff Hunt,
Yes.
Paul Moran is yes. John Ritter,
Yes.
thank you. Lisa Sherring,
Yes.
unanimous, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Thank you very much. We look forward to this. This will go to the Board of Aldermen, which will be on we will do our very best to have it as early as possible in January to the board. So, thank you. All right, next items, aldermanic report. We do have an alderman here, but I don't know if she wants to give an aldermanic report. If not, we will move on to the director's report. We can get a mayoral report too if we'd really want to, but director's report, please.
The only projects that we've received for the January meeting are the two that have been continued from this meeting. So if anything small comes in that we can still fit and meet noticing requirements, we will try to do so. And we'll keep you posted.
Ms. Kelly, are those projects moving forward actively, though? We expect that we will be able to hear those in January.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Excellent. With that, any items for the good of the order? I wish all of you a very happy holiday season, good break. I look forward to working with you in the new year. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Bilbrock. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed can stay here. Thank you. We are adjourned.